Hey, this is Al. I'm here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA, the most important state in the United States. I think so, right?
Right, this week.
Right
This
now.
week, next week, it's important.
And
Philadelphians.
Historically, too.
And historically, too. I think 2026 is a big year for the red, white, and blue. Anyway, that's not what this webcast is about. It's about week 8. It's about language. It's about the language poets. It's about, among other things, the person to my left and your right, Charles Bernstein. Charles is here. Oh, yes. Hi, Charles.
Great to be here.
We're very excited to have you. So Charles is in the syllabus, around the syllabus, astride the syllabus, under the syllabus, over the syllabus, and also here in the room, which is amazing. And Lainey Brown is here. Hello, Lainey. How are you?
Happy to be here.
Yes, wonderful to have you here. Of course, always. Sophia DuRose, hello.
Hi.
Hi, Sophia. Jason is here. Hi, Jason. How are you doing this week?
Hey, I'm doing well.
Good.
I'm doing well.
Erica Kaufman is here. Hello, Erica.
Hello.
What time is it there in the Hudson Valley? Look at your watch. He thinks I'm funny to him. It's 3:01. And Max McKenna, and it is 9:01 p.m. where you are. Good old Berlin. Fantastic. Kate Colby in Providence. Hello, Kate. It's 3:01 there. 3:02 now. And Bartleby has preferred not to.
Oh, he prefers to, but I prefer not to.
We are referring to the dog, the little puppy Bartleby. Yes, very nice. Dave Poplar, hello.
Hey.
Hey, and Andrew. Hello, Andrew. How are you?
I'm good. Hi.
Great. So glad. And we have some people here who are joining us, and I'm so excited about that. I see Gab just showed up. Yes, and so we got a nice crew of people, and we got a portable mic. Natalia has the mic. Natalia, will you turn that on and say hello?
Hi.
How's week 8 going for you, Natalia?
It's really good. We did some exciting activities.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed that.
And tomorrow we're going to be talking about a Charles Bernstein poem, and here he is. So it couldn't get any realer than that, you know. And I just want to shout out, among other visitors, we have Aidan Hunt here, who's a wonderful, longtime ModPo pal, and he's ready. You're ready. So I've given everybody a number. Why? Because I have a die. God, that goes up to 50. I can't do it. I've got a number that goes, I got a die that goes up to, you think this is funny, Joe? Oh, what poem are we talking
It's because
about?
it's not in the syllabus.
Oh, it's not in the syllabus.
You're
Yes,
fine.
it's good. How did you even know we're going to talk about it? Oh, but I sent the PDF, didn't I? Oh,
No.
that's a problem. Okay.
I got you.
Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to go around and everybody is going to offer their favorite poem of the week from ModPo to ModPo Plus. And then once we get all that into the discussion, we're going to use this thing to randomize who gets to pick the poem. I also want to remind our listeners and our viewers that you can call us at 610-616-3208, 610-616-3208. And I am going to make a gift to the first person who calls of a new book by Charles Bernstein that is not out yet, but when it comes, I'm going to get a copy and I'm going to send it to whoever is the first caller. And Charles, this book is coming out from the University of Chicago Press, and it is called
The Kinds of Poetry I Want, Essays and Comedies, out in a couple of weeks.
The Kind of Poetry I Want, essays and all that other stuff. Mm-hmm. The kind of poetry he wants. We often talk about in ModPo the kind of poetry we admire. It's a very similar phrase. That's a little less brash than the ones that I want, but there you go. Okay, so the first caller, 610-616-3208. If you want a Skype call, Chris Martin can handle it. ModPo Pen, 2 N's. Dave Poplar, will you look at the webcast subforum? I sent out an announcement a little late with that link, and so there may not be a lot of action. There wasn't when I last checked, but that's okay. Lainey and Sophia, will you look at the comment stream? Can you tell us what's already happening in the comment stream, please?
Sure. Let's see.
Or Sophia, who's there already.
A lot of folks saying hi. They're excited that Charles is here. Some folks excited that Aiden is here in person.
Yay, Aiden.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So we're going to check occasionally to the comment stream. And this week we might actually add someone who's a regular in the comment stream to the dice, to the rolling. So, wow, that's we've never done that. So once you guys establish that someone is here consistently, or you guys can raise your hands, as it were, by saying your game, and we'll add you to the list. Okay? All right. So, Max, you're up first. Favorite poem. Jason's on deck.
Yeah, I'm going to put a word in for Ray Armantrout's Overhearing, which is on Modpo Plus. Would you like me to say why? Or
Yeah, sure. Yeah, briefly, though. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really beautifully cuts to some of the major concerns of this week in terms of language, what language is as a meaning system, and what it means to exist in that system that seems at times to be self-referential, and how one can perhaps get out of it or get some sort of view on it or purchase on it.
Nice. Love that. Thank you, Max. Okay, Jason. I think Jason was next.
Yeah.
Jason's up, and Erica's on deck.
Yeah, I just followed to Max that I was listening to all different versions of the Tennessee Waltz last night.
I love that song.
Found that the Patti Page original recording was one of the first recordings where the singer sang multiple parts, and they were all overlaid on top of each other. So she's basically doing a duet with herself, which I thought was interesting considering
Yes.
poem.
And Tennessee Waltz is actually a meta song, because the Tennessee Waltz is not the song that's in the story of the poem,
Right, exactly.
right?
But
and
so
and the,
I'm
and
gonna
the
pick
song
like-
that's in the poem doesn't exist.
Right. Well, it exists in the reader.
Yeah, great. I love that. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
My pick is Charles's as if in from Mappa Plus, as if the trees by their very roots had hold of us.
You're suggesting a Charles Bernstein poem. Fantastic. Erica, you're up, and Sophia is on deck.
Oh my gosh, I love this week so much, and it's hard for me to pick one. I would echo Jason's suggestion, as if the trees by their very roots had hold of us.
Wow.
And I would also be excited by There's a Hole in My Pocket, also from Modpo Plus by Charles. And I'd ballyhoo the Lynn Haginian Constant Change figures in Modpo
Oh, wow, the
Plus.
one that we did the poem talk about.
Yep.
Very cool. Okay. Sophia's up, and then Natalia is on deck. Favorite poem. Sophia?
I think last year I said Harriet Mullins Sleeping with the Dictionary. So this year I'm going to say Lynn Haginian's My Life, partly because I read an incredible position paper on it by Gab in the audience here.
Gab is here.
Yeah.
Kudos, Gab. Thank you very much. Sophia, Natalia, favorite poem?
I think Persons and Places.
John Keane. Can you tell us what it looks like on the page?
So there's two columns running down the entire poem, and yeah.
And they don't intersect.
They don't intersect.
And that one of them describes the point of view of looking by George Santayana, a young professor at the time, and the other is the perspective of looking and to some degree of cruising by a young graduate student named W.E.B. Du Bois. So it's cruising in Harvard Yard. Mm-hmm. All right, cool. That's a good one. Who was on deck? Did I put somebody on deck? Aiden Hunt. Can you give Aiden the mic? Natalia and Al will be on deck.
Hello. Yeah, I just wanted to say this is my favorite week. This is probably the only week that I like all the poems in the main syllabus.
Wow.
But I have to pick out Harriet Mullen's Sleeping with the Dictionary this year because I just love the conceit. I kept thinking of all the different meanings and how making love to a dictionary creates writing and poetry. And yeah, that's about it.
Thank you, Aiden.
No problem.
You have to leave early, but do you want to do one? Oh, sure. Okay. Got to get you a mic.
Thank you. I love my life. That's my favorite for sure.
Okay, great. That's good. All right, let's go to Sanvi, and Lainey will be on deck. I think it's just on.
Oh, is it on? Okay.
Yeah.
So my favorite poem probably would be Sleeping with the Dictionary
Okay.
this week.
Good choice. Lainey. And Kate will be on deck.
I was going to say My Life because it's always a favorite, but since many have mentioned it, I'm going to go with May Bursenberg's Concordance in Mod Po Plus.
Wow. May Bursenberg. Good choice. Okay, Kate is up and Charles is on deck.
I also picked My Life, and it's real-time transcription of memory that somehow manages to both comment on and double back on itself. But since it's been brought up many times, I'm going to throw in my Emily Dickinson.
Oh, yes, Susan Howe. Good choice. Charles, you're up and Andrew's on deck.
Well, I'm not going to pick a favorite, as I mentioned to you in an email.
You're not, oh, that's right. Because, can I just say why? Because Charles is part of this community, and it would be bad. They're all tuning in from around the world.
I'm so happy that there's such enthusiasm about this set of readings, and of course the whole class. But I love all of and I'm very involved with so many of the poems. Here it would be easier to pick what I like the least. But I just a comment. I have no idea what that would be.
Nobody's listening. I mean, nobody will know.
Yeah.
How about let's go back to the early. Let's go back to week 3. Who do you like the least in week 3?
In week
that's Pound and Williams.
6. Well, I like it's
HD.
Oscar Wilde once said, "Only an auctioneer admires all schools of art," and I'm with that. But you can't like everything. But the problem is with Al and me. I used to look up poets.
Are you including me now in this problem?
I used to.
The problem with Al and me.
Before we had Mod Poetry in Pennsylvania, I would look up when I was in Buffalo poets that I was enthusiastic about. There was no information on the web, and either I would get something that we created, or Al Fillery's 88-page,
English 88, yeah, the forerunner
which was
of Mod Po.
Forerunner of Mod Po. So I think that you and I have
he
similar
would search
set
for
of
poems,
interests.
and he'd either get his own archive or mine, and then we were finally reunited or united here.
Reunited, cause it feels
in 2003, you came
right.
here, and wow!
But
my life has been charmed.
But there are
ever
many
since.
poets and poetry institutions that I do not like, and if you read the kinds of poetry
You're selling your book.
You're going to see.
You turned into the auctioneer.
Many positive. I write about dozens of individual poets, including a lot of the people in this. Also, I'm very negative about.
Do you know why Charles is sitting next to me? Anybody want to guess?
Well, I know.
Say it.
No.
So I can kick him when he talks too much. So I'm not kicking him yet. If I kick you too much, you'll be injured and we can't have dinner together. So that's a problem. Okay. And by the way, never mind. Okay. Andrew's up and Dave Poplar's on deck.
I choose the excerpt on Mod Po Plus from Kant is Night by Leslie Scalapino.
Oh, Scalapino. That is a good one. Thank you, Andrew. You can be counted on to find the cool stuff. Appreciate that so much. I forgot who was up next. Who was up next? Dave Poplar, followed by someone on the phone I hope someone on the phone, you're listening because you're about to suggest what your favorite poem is. Okay, Dave Poplar, hi.
Hi. I actually want to suggest Lynn Haginian's essay, The Rejection of Closure, which is on ModPo Plus, because I just think it's such a great explanation of open text.
And as a matter of fact, I just added it. We've never had that essay. It's an excerpt from the essay. And we haven't made the video to go along with it. We didn't do that today.
Yeah,
But soon
it's a
there'll be a
wonderful-
video discussion of it. But people in the ModPo class meeting in person here tomorrow, we're definitely going to look at the rejection of closure, that essay. Thank you very much. Now, who's on the phone, Chris Martin?
Brian Roth is calling from Fort Collins, Colorado. Mostly to say hi, but I'm sure he has a favorite poem, too.
Okay. Hi, Brian. How are you?
Hi. How you doing?
I'm great. I think
first time caller.
this is your first time calling us.
Yeah, I've been following ModPo for years, and it's the first time I called in.
Wait, Brian. Hold on one second.
To be honest, I didn't really.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
Hold on. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I mean, I'm not sorry. When did you start with ModPo? How many years ago?
Oh my gosh, probably at least 7 or 8. I've lost track.
Wow, that's really cool. So why suddenly did you decide to call? Because it's the book, the free book.
To be honest, yes, I just happened to have my, see that, and I'm like, oh, I could call in. And
Brian.
I like poetry books.
Okay, that's really great. Well, we will send it to you. Did Chris get your address? Okay, cool. Once you give us your address, you're never not going to hear from us though, because we're going to send you like fundraising letters and stuff like that. So welcome to the club. Anyway, do you have a favorite poem this week? I'm sure you called to say something else, but.
Well, I have to be honest. I was really busy this week here in Fort Collins, Colorado, with real-life poetry events, so I didn't have time to keep up with the reading. But I will say, I love Mr. Bernstein's poem, Pompeii.
Wow.
Kind of reminded me of Musée des Beaux-Arts.
That's right.
With that first line. And that's probably my favorite poem of his. But the reason I called in about the book is because I've always wanted to read more of Bernstein's poetry, and I thought, well,
actually, that book is mostly essays.
This book is essays. This book talks about the poetry.
Okay, well,
wants.
that's fine. I like reading essays.
You sure? You sure you still want this thing? Because the next caller could get it.
Yes, No, I love reading poetry.
There are poems in there.
Essays about
there
poetry.
Are poems in there.
Yeah,
so that's great.
He messes with you. You think it's a book of essays, and turns out there's some poems in there. And then you read a book of poems, and there's some essays.
I had the great experience about a year ago of reading Pompeii, a poem that uses the famous destruction of that wonderful city in Naples, just like 45 minutes from Pompeii, translated by an Italian poet into Italian, and it was great to read it there. And the poem in Italian actually sounds much better than my English. So
that's not true. Brian,
though.
The book you're about to receive was written by a person who is the expert at boondoggles, such as going to Pompeii to read a poem. You could have done it by fucking Zoom, but you've got to go. And who paid for that?
Actually, unfortunately, I did pay myself.
Well,
but
I take it back.
It was
I'm
a
so sorry.
small
I shouldn't
press
be giving
in
away
Italy.
books. You need
was
royalties.
a wonderful book, but that press did not have very much money.
All right, this is degenerating into, Brian, thank you so much for calling, and thanks for being a ModPo. You're part of the very large population of people who follow ModPo every year, but who once in a while show up, and we appreciate that you showed up.
By the way, this wonderful
conversation.
Stop talking. Stop talking.
All right, thanks a lot, and you guys keep up the good work.
Thank you, Brian.
Wonderful.
That's Brian.
Appreciated it.
From. Are we allowed to send books to Colorado these days? I think so. Yeah. Okay. You never know. Okay. I don't know who was next, but I would love to hear from Elan, followed by Joe. Favorite poem.
Hi. So my favorite poem would probably have to be, and this is not because the legend himself is in the room with us, but in A Restless World Like This, I like
This Is.
Sorry, Like This Is.
Yeah.
Yes. I don't know. I really connected with, and I wrote about this in my position paper, but how it encourages you to think in 3 different timelines almost, like past, present, and future, and I really like that.
Yes. Very good. Thank you. And Joe is up. Noah's on deck.
I have to say, my Emily Dickinson.
Why?
I just love the concept of revisiting old poetry and like making it your own. I love that.
And what's the relationship of that title to the poem Volcanoes Be in Sicily? Do you remember? Oh, this is a quiz.
Yeah, this is a quiz.
Volcanoes Be in Sicily. She talks about my geography. Right?
Yes.
So it's like Susan Howe saying, well, my Emily Dickinson.
That's
It's
beautiful.
audacious to say that you have your own geography.
It's beautiful.
Thank you, Joe. We're going to go to Noah, followed by Gab.
Hi, I'm going to agree with Natalia and say Persons and Places by
Great.
John Keane.
Great. Did that get a lot of votes in class yesterday?
I don't think
I
so.
don't think
No.
so. Boo. Okay. Someday we should talk about a poem that no one voted for. Anti-democracy. Thanks, Natalia, for putting a fine point on that. Okay, we're going to go to Gab, then Drew, and then we're going to roll this die and find out who gets to tell us what we're going to talk about. And there's also someone on the phone. Okay, Gab?
I also really loved My Life. I hadn't read any of her writing before, and now I'm obsessed. So thank you for sharing with me, and thank you for the kind words about my paper. I'm glad it made sense at all.
Your paper has been shouted out in front of tens of thousands, since it's the way it goes.
It's surreal.
Drew, you've got a poem, a favorite.
I really liked Sleeping with the Dictionary.
Great.
Yeah, I liked all the possibility and the arousal created from possibility.
Yes.
Of all the words.
Have you ever slept with a dictionary?
No, but I'm gonna have to try it soon.
Okay, I think we should all try it. The problem, I mean, dictionaries. Do you have a dictionary that's not online?
I can find one.
Okay. Shouldn't be very hard. Okay. All right, Chris, we have someone on the phone.
We do indeed. Yulia is calling us back.
Oh, Yulia. Hello, Yulia. How are you?
Oh my God. Hi. How are you?
Where are you today? Are you in Germany somewhere?
Yes, I'm actually still in Germany because I got my German citizenship.
Oh,
and I'm waiting.
Congrats. Wait, that means EU citizenship. That means you can go almost anywhere.
Exactly. I can maybe even come visit you in Kelly's writer's house.
Yeah, but we're not in the EU. You'll have to go through customs.
Yes, but I don't need a visa anymore.
We'll have I think we should have a ModPo passport. What do you think? Can we work on that? Chris, can you counterfeit a ModPo passport? Actually, that sounds like more of a Zach thing, but...
We can talk about that off air, yeah.
You're going to take us all away. Yulia, how are you? You're good?
Oh my God. And you know what? I got my book on Wednesday, and I was so happy.
It only took like
I
a month.
actually was so surprised that when I got the book, The Difference is Spreading, I got so emotional when I saw your name and Anna's name on the cover. I didn't expect it.
Nobody's
it
ever
was so...
gotten emotional seeing my name on a book cover.
Wow. That's a wonderful
Except
book.
Charles,
No,
who
I never
loves
thought,
all my
never
books.
thought I would
that is
get
a
emotional
wonderful
having a book by
Yulia.
you. That's the...
Oh, so much love. That's great. Do you want to pick a favorite poem?
Indeed, which has been mentioned a couple of times, and which actually Max and the rest of the team here in Europe have spent a big portion of an hour talking about yesterday. There's a Hole in My Pocket.
Oh, love that poem. Okay. Yulia, I'm sure you called to say something else, but I'm gonna ask you to hang up the phone and listen to the rest of the webcast. Are you cool with that?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Lots of love. Wow. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to roll the dice. Charles is 1, Sophia 2, Lainey 4. Everybody's got a number. Okay? What, Lainey?
Do you want to tell us what our numbers are so we know?
Okay, yes. Charles is 1, Sophia's 2. I mess with the rules of the game. Lainey's like, yesterday or Tuesday, yesterday I really messed you up, and I'm really
I wasn't the only one.
I know. I'm really bad at explaining games.
Good. It's all good.
The games are out of control. Charles is 1, Sophia 2, Lainey 3, Max 4, Jason 5. I'm screwing you up now. Erica, 13. Kate, 14. Dave, 15. Andrew, 18. Natalia, 6. Joe, 7. Aiden, 8. Al, 9. Elon, 10. Sanvi, 11. Noah, 12. Gab is 16. And Drew is 17. And 18, 19, and 20 are nobody. Okay? Do you want to roll, Lainey?
Sure. I thought you were asking Charles.
No,
Special
I'm not going to let
guest.
Charles. He'll make something of it.
But I want to just put down.
He's got a 20-sided dice in his
Betting?
pocket.
Okay, wait. What are you betting
Wait,
on?
that's a lot of money. That's $100.
Okay, so
Okay,
Who
the
are you
next
putting it
caller.
no.
No, this is done.
It's
The next caller
I'm gonna win.
is getting.
I may win though.
Who are you betting on? I don't know.
Who are you betting on?
Dice.
I don't
I wanna bet
understand.
on the game.
Okay,
I,
all right.
I'm a stranger here. I
All
throw
right.
dice.
You are
You
really a
win.
stranger.
Craps.
Put the money away. Your money is.
I play craps too.
Your money
I'll
is
get
no
in on
good
it.
here. I've always wanted to say that.
right.
Your money is no good here. Lainey,
right,
just
I'm
roll
ro-
the dice, please.
9.
9. That's you're on it. 6. You have What was your favorite poem? Yeah, what was it?
My life.
It's my life, and that's what we're going to talk about now. Okay. No, don't apologize. Don't apologize. Okay. So now what I'd like to do is ask Lainey, Max, and Jason just to say absolutely whatever you want to get us into a conversation about my life in that order. Lainey, Max, Jason. Starting with Lainey, please.
So this is a life-changing book for generations of poets, including myself. Completely changed the possibility of how one might write through a life under the happy influence of Gertrude Stein.
Yes, Stein was so important to Lynn, and that's made clear in the essays, very much so. Thank you, Lainey. That was fabulous and succinct. Max, and then Jason. Any thoughts at all on my life?
Well, we talk about it sometimes in the context of the new sentence and juxtaposition, and it does, really elegantly serve as a model for this aesthetic, this poetics of juxtaposition, of putting different pieces together that on their own make sense, and then trying to let a third meaning emerge.
Yes, a third meaning, meaning you have a sentence and another sentence, but the juxtaposition creates a connection that you didn't expect between those two. And then, of course, it permutates, and you get hundreds and maybe even thousands of these connections that weren't meant, right? So it connects to week 9, but it also connects back to the simplest things like the station of the metro, where you get this juxtaposition and it creates all kinds of new things you didn't know. Fantastic. Jason, thought on my life?
Yeah, I was like, I know it's kind of a counter to the spirit of the piece, but I was kind of fixating when I was reading it on just particular moments. And I guess one thing I was really interested in and thinking about all these poems this week is about not only what they're doing with disjunction, but that they are dealing with time. They're all messing with time in certain ways, or any sort of or they're messing with conventional time. So the quote I pulled from it was uneven and internal, asymmetrical but additive time. A child, meanwhile, had turned her tricycle upside down and was turning the pedal with her hand to make the front wheel spin. The solemn flickering effects, not knowing what you're doing.
Yeah, that's lovely. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play just a half a minute of Lynn performing a section of this poem, and then I want to, would you roll the dice 3 times, and whoever comes up will be asked to comment on what they hear in this performance.
19.
Okay, 19 is going to be, we don't have one.
Okay. 14.
14 will be Kate.
4.
4 will be Max.
Oh, we got 9 again.
Okay, do another one.
2.
2 will be Sophia. So Kate, Max, Sophia. I'm going to play somewhat randomly a few seconds of Lynn Haginian. Here it goes.
The inevitable sentiment is a preliminary. Water cannot be a mirror, nor any more like a mirror than the skin of the forehead. The day will twinkle, sparkle, shoot forth its single bits. Breathless through tunnels, breathless past graves. Still I had lost the little cluster in which I first saw that yellow spot resembling a blossom or a bee. A troublemaker who walked in the front door. The catsup that no one tastes because of the shape of the bottle. I was thinking of the slippery love seat upholstered in a pattern of roses. Vision determines the view. They are supposed to be offering you a good time, too. She would if she could. As for we who love to be astonished, a weasel eats 20 times as much as a lizard of the same size.
Kate, what did you hear? Any thoughts?
I think it's so incredible how she's both remembering and composing at the same time, that she can hold past and present together and reflect them in the language, which, you know, processes itself as it moves forward.
Yes, beautifully said. Thank you. Max, what'd you hear?
There's a very specific affect in the way that she reads. Like, it's not, for example, it's not an ecstatic reading. It's not a particularly, there isn't too much emphasis. There's a sort of equal measured weight given to all the words, all the sentences. And I think that's really part and parcel of this idea of emergent meaning that we were talking about a moment ago. There's this way in which you need to let the language kind of do its work without overly inflecting it with your own performance.
Right. Totally right. And this is part of the idea of this generation of poets, among whom we have Charles, of believing in non-hierarchy of sentences, of, you know, in Lynn's case, subordination is not something she was interested in. There is subordination grammatically in some of the sentences, but all the sentences get an equal chance. So I want to turn to Sophia, and then I want to ask Charles just to reflect a little bit on, basically, although you were in New York and Lynn was in the West Coast, in the Bay Area, what it was like to encounter this series. You know, when you first heard it, or, you know, what did you think? And it aligned with what you were trying to do somewhat, and would love to hear your reflections on that. So Sophia and then Charles.
Well, I really appreciate what Max just said. And I think she just has an incredible clarity to her voice, which matches, I think, the project of the piece. And I do feel like when you listen to the recording, it doesn't seem like any sentence is more precious in this collecting of a life and its components. And the performance of that is emblematic of the construction of the language. What stood out to me specifically in this portion of the reading is this sentence, water cannot be a mirror, because I'm thinking of, like, it makes me think of just the broader question of what can a life be, and how can I capture its slipperiness, and can a life be constituted out of language, and if so, what language can I choose? And when you go through these sentences that are both complex and simple, with this measured tone where every sentence has an equal weight, I feel like it is an amazing attempt at constituting a life that is sometimes simple and sometimes difficult.
And it inspires you as a poet to some degree, looking for respect of every thought and every memory gets equal respect, right? Before we turn to Charles for some reflections on first encountering Lynn, would you guys look at the thread, the feed, the flow, whatever we call it? Say a few things that are going on there.
Alexander Perez says, "What is going on? This is confusing. I want to hear from Bernstein." So that's going to happen.
Oh, you did you set Alexander up? Yeah, that's an alias for you, right?
Yeah, you see, I have my
Look,
closed.
nothing up my
That's
sleeve.
hilarious.
Oh my God, Alexander, you have no idea what you just created there. That's
Laura Lippman said, "I never knew I would laugh so much while studying poetry."
yeah, we are funny. I mean, Charles and I together are a shtick for sure.
Yeah.
Any others?
Emergent meaning through the reading is interesting, from Jane Ward.
Hi, Jane.
Vijaya says, replying to Hannah, "I always see music in the spaces between syllables. There is always a resonance."
Great, thank you. All right, Charles, some reflections on Lynn?
Well, laughing, but of course it's impossible for me to hear Lynn's name and the word "my life" mentioned so many times here with such great love for her work, because she died earlier this year, and it's a very sad thing for those of us who knew her. I met her when I was in my mid-20s, and so the words "my life" take on a different kind of quality now, to think of it when she's no longer here. I had a chance to write about this poem in The Difference is Spreading, the anthology that Al put together of short readings. So, and that would be a better way to look at what I think about it. But of course, one of the things is that it just became so iconic, and so many people came to that work that didn't like a lot of the other things that Lynn did, because I love My Life, but I don't love it more than her other work, which I think is astounding. All of it. It's all so incredibly beautifully written, and each one is different, but it's accessible in a different way because of the autobiographical frame. We should say, and I suppose it's apparent, but it hasn't been said in this conversation, that the structure of it is the number of years. She did it later with more sentences, but so each section is the number of years that she was alive at the time, 35. 37. And there are 37 sections of 37. So it was, for me, 37, that was a long time ago, and she was young. I also think that it came into the context of work that Ron Sullivan, it was mentioned, this new sentence, this was a term of Ron Sullivan, which is a confusing sentence, a confusing phrase, because they're really old sentences, but newly permuted. What Ron was arguing for and what Lynn enacts here, the sentences are not complicated. They're not changing the typical grammatical syntax, but they're ordered in non-sequential or non-linear ways. And, he opened up that possibility with especially Ketchak and Chanting, so which were also to some degree autobiographical. But Lynn, because of her specific sensibility, really just ran away with that possibility of these permeating individual sentences, because they all could be stranded back to her life, which is a little bit of an illusion in a sense. But also the sensibility of the work is so striking. It's so there's something so evanescent and not dark. I always think about. Yeah. I think Lynn has a dark side to her. I mean, everybody does, and her work, other works of hers. But one aspect to it is, and for one thing, it isn't sarcastic. It isn't ironic. It doesn't quote popular culture. It's not zany in that way. And
those
I
are
think
things.
Those are all things that would characterize
qualities
me.
Of you,
yeah.
Yes, right.
And
difference between New York and San Francisco.
Yeah, and yes, absolutely. And I think she's very much and I think that's another part of it. She's a very different, almost geographic sensibility. I mean, that work wouldn't be. Everybody lives in a different place, and so the quality of their work would be different. If you grew up in New York City, as I did in the 1950s, you wouldn't have a work like My Life. So it's one of the interesting things about it is that it is so embedded in the particulars of her biography or autobiography.
What's so interesting when the New York language poets connected actively, personally, and aesthetically with the San Francisco and others. What happened as a result of that?
Well, Lynn, I read about this in, I guess it's the Paris Review, one of my early meetings with Lynn, so I won't repeat that story, but it's a kind of a funny one. When Susan B. and I went out to San Francisco when we first met. Lynn's a little bit older than me, so she's like 10 years older. So she started to publish later, and this is, well, people here are all different ages, but when you're 25, it's different. Lynn was and she had children too, and she was living with Larry Oakes at that time, so she was a very emotionally stable and important person for me, and very supportive. Published, indeed, the book that a couple of people mentioned, As If the Trees by Their Very Roots Had Hold of Us, is in a book that she published, one of the first books that somebody else published of mine, called Senses of Responsibility. So she did, and hand set that type. So, but also the first work of hers we saw was from her mid-30s. And I'm very happy to say that Edinburgh University Press has just now published her work from before 1975, so maybe when she's 20 to 35 years old. I don't know when it starts. I don't have that book yet, which I've never read. So this earlier kind of Pride is the Thought of What Thinking or My Life, Lynn Hegenian, we'll get a chance to look at. So I'm very eager to see that. But I mean, I think that, Lynn was a friend of mine right from when I really first started to get involved with writing and publishing. So, and she was always present for my entire writing life, and will be even now that she's dead, sadly.
Yeah, I mean, the marvel of the rolling the dice and of randomness that Lynn would come up as the first one is it's better than if I had said, we're going to talk about Lynn, damn it, because we care about Lynn. And then that it comes up arbitrarily just means so much more. Okay, so what I'd like to do, Lainey, is have you roll the dice again, and then Erica, Dave, and Andrew will respond to whichever poem is randomly chosen.
5.
So 5 would be Jason. Jason, what was your choice? Do you remember? You have to unmute, though. Unmute.
Sorry. It's easier to talk when I'm on mute.
Absolutely.
So I picked Charles's As If the Trees by Their Very Roots Had Hold of Us.
Okay, so everybody is going to have to look that one up. It's not even in ModPo.
ModPo Plus.
It's is it in ModPo Plus? How come I'm not finding it in the search? Oh, I know. I have to reset the search. Okay. All right. I'm going to ask. It's a long poem, though.
I can pick a shorter one.
Do you want to pick a shorter one? Let's do it.
Well, you don't have to.
Let's do it. No, I want to do a Charles Bernstein poem, but let's pick a shorter one.
Well, what if we did just the first stanza?
Yeah, I was just going to say with Jason.
All right. It's in here, isn't it?
It is.
Do you want to read the first stanza? Okay. Sure. Everybody, I'm giving Erica, Dave, and Andrew a chance to search for it in ModPo Plus, and then Charles will enter into the record a reading of the first stanza, and then we'll talk about it.
So this was published in the book that Lynn published.
It's all connected, isn't it?
Yeah, 1979. So I think at that point I only had Shades, Douglas Messerly, 1978, and then Lynn. So it was my second book.
A new young poet.
Yeah, it was the second book. It's a beautiful letterpress printed book, but small book. But I think that I could read just the. Maybe I'll read the last two. I'll skip the beginning and just go to the end, unlike what Jason said. Right. We shore ourselves hour by hour in anticipation that there will be nothing to do. Pack a sandwich and let's eat later. And of course, the anticipation is quite appropriate, accounting for the most part for whatever activity we do manage. eternally buzzing over the time, unable to live in it. Maybe if we go up a ways, we can get a better view. But of course, in that sense, views don't improve. In the present moment, if we could only see it, which is to say, to begin with, stop looking with such anticipation, what is unfolding before us puts to rest any necessity for progression. So more of these tracings, as if by some magic of the phonetic properties of these squiggles, or does that only mystify the power of presence, which is as well a sort of postponement?
Thank you, Charles. So we're going to turn to Erica. Just any thought at all to get us started, Erica?
Well, two thoughts. Well, thank you, Charles. It's so nice to hear you read that. And I found myself, as I was listening, thinking a lot about parataxis and juxtaposition of image, but also thinking about Lynn's work and, you know, what Lynn talks about in the rejection of closure that some folks were mentioning earlier about the open text and the potential that that makes, and also the new kinds of connections that can be made when you sort of disrupt the way we often think about making meaning from poems.
Lovely. Great start. Thank you so much, Erica. Dave, followed by Andrew.
Somehow it's so amazing that it seems like it's almost aphoristic and imparting some truths to consider, but at the same time, it's totally conveying just an uncertainty. I don't know what the truth is. So it's pretty interesting the way it can be so assertive and critical and questioning.
I think it's one of the common qualities of language writing, which is to use aphorisms and then to torque them or to investigate how they got to be assumed in the language. Right.
There's
And
that
then-
wonderful Lynn Hitchenian first book that we knew of up until this new, Thought is the Bride of What Thinking, the phrase of which reminds me of what Erica was saying.
Yeah. Thank you, Dave. Andrew?
I was thinking of the remark of Lynn Higinian's in The Rejection of Closure that in open texts, all the elements of the work are maximally excited in relation to this poem, and in particular to the couple of lines in it where Bernstein writes, "What is unfolding before us puts to rest any necessity for progression." And I feel like the relationship that's already been drawn so far by the other commentators between sentences and paragraphs, or, poetic sequences that are discontinuous with themselves through parataxis or juxtaposition allows for a different kind of excitement and intensity that is foreclosed by syntactic naturalism.
Wow. Fantastic. Thank you, Andrew. Okay. Lainey, would you roll the die again? We'll get a new poem into play.
20 we don't have, right?
No, we don't have 20.
1.
That's Charles. Oh, you're not picking a poem. Okay, let's roll it again.
13.
Erica, what poem would you like to talk about, or what was your favorite?
Am I allowed to change my mind?
You are. I mean,
Yes.
what happens if people
course.
break the rules during a ModPo webcast? I mean, we'll turn your Zoom off or something. I don't know.
So I raised this purely because it's a name that wasn't mentioned, and it's a writer that I'm deeply interested in. It's from ModPo Plus, and it's Will Alexander's Inner Palpability.
Wow. Will Alexander. Fantastic. Okay, so everybody get busy searching in ModPo Plus. And which one did you pick? Inner Palpability?
It's part
Yeah, and it looks like there's a recording.
17.1
Yeah.
of ModPo Plus
Yeah.
week.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to read the poem, and then we're going to use the die to indicate who gets to talk about it, which means everybody is on equal notice to try to get ready to say something about Will's poem. And I think that Sophia and Lainey and I were walking on the beach in Santa Monica when we
Yes.
did a video about this poem.
We
With
did.
Will, you mean?
No, Will joined us for another one, but not.
That
He joined
one.
us
Joined us
with
in the
Harriet
garden.
Mullen in the botanical garden at UCLA.
Wonderful.
Unforgettable experience.
Amazing.
So here's inner palpability. Implied inner palpability as transpersonal dictation, all works composed as a musical arc, as if rowing in an isthmus of lightning, the threat through rising vapor currents, hissing with dissolution, this being none other than internal cartography, ghostly cipher as interiority by number, again, ghostly flares and ciphers, as if the arc from lunar suns had risen, therefore suns appearing above suns, ignited via the blue fragmentation that is grace. Elon's freaking out. Like, what if the die calls on me? The die. It's so good. I mean, Will's amazing. And I love this new form of the webcast where everything gets randomized because I used to have a plan. And now, okay, Erica, while we're preparing 3 people to respond, also randomly chosen, but Erica, while we're doing that, would you just say a little bit about why you picked it and what do you respect about Will?
I just, it's from this book, Divine Blue Light. And it's a book of these poems that are simultaneously like totally surreal, but also rooted in jazz, because the book is for John Coltrane. And this particular poem is like totally baffling to me, but I love it so much because of the way that the language surprises me from word to word. Like that first stanza is sort of an incredible tercet, implied inner palpability, which just saying it out loud, like, it's such a visceral thing as transpersonal dictation. Like, I think I know what these words mean individually, but kind of putting it together in a whole, it's such an interesting reading experience for me. Because no matter how many times I read it, I'm still kind of unmoored in the best possible way.
Beautiful. Thank you for getting us started that way. Okay, let's roll the die 3 times.
2.
2 is Sophia.
13.
13 is Erica. You already spoke.
Okay. 1.
Charles.
1 more. Do you
Yep.
want? 5.
Jason. All right. Sophia, you're first. We spent 40 minutes on the beach talking about this. Don't tell me you have nothing to say.
I remember spending 40 minutes on the beach talking about this, and I think the first thing I said in that video was, what? No, I'm kind of in the same boat as Erica with this poem where I love the sound of it. It's exciting to listen to. It's exciting to read. I'm not convinced that I necessarily understand what's going on, but because of its connection to jazz, I always think about like call and response and like the fundamental, like a foundation in jazz being this call and response element where you like listen to what's going on around you, and it makes me think of vibrations and wavelengths. And I feel like this poem is all about like this surreal kind of supernatural world and all of the like science that goes into our ability to exist and how we operate and inhabit a world that we respond to and we have a responsibility for. And that to me is grace.
You are amazing, first of all. You began that little riff saying, I don't know what the fuck this poem means. And then, and then you just blew us away, as you usually do.
Thanks. I'm sweating, but it's okay.
Well, I think it's the sweat equity of close reading.
I just want to say something about this
It's your
comment.
turn, Charles.
I'm just going to meta comment about the first thing that you both said, Erica, which is that when I'm reading this, I didn't know what was going on. I loved it, but I think that's a fantastic response to a poem. I don't think there's any reason to feel you understand or you can talk about or that you get and let alone understand, stand under and away from. I think it's a wonderful first response. And to keep that first response, even to a poem you know very well, is crucial to loving and enjoying poetry. It doesn't mean that you can't go on to say great things, as you both did. But I love the initial sense of I don't know what to say about it.
Yeah.
I
mean,
agree.
I think Will, yeah. Thank you, Lainey. I think Will would be willing to use the word magic to describe the magic of writing some things, transpersonal dictation, and just seeing what happens. And to me, it takes us back to as if the trees by their very roots had hold of us. Listen to the meta writing at the end of that poem, okay? And here Charles is talking about his writing the poem, the tracings of the writing, and hear the word magic. Ready? So more of these tracings, the writing, as if by some magic of the phonetic properties of these squiggles. Or does that only mystify the power of present, which is as well a sort of postponement? So you've got reading theory, you've got skepticism, that would be Charles's mode, like magic? Did I say magic? No, I can't say magic, but because I don't want to mystify the power of presence. It's just exactly what I'm so glad that Will is in this week, even though it doesn't perfectly fit, because this is exactly what they're thinking about.
Will is a great poet who, I've read as much as I could, but he's a particularly good poet to say you cannot possibly take in the scale of what he's doing, because it's, and I don't use this expression in a vernacular way, it's mind-blowing and it's cosmic generation. I mean, he makes far out seem like a literal description of what somebody's doing, not in the sense of strange, but he's in a kind of cosmic space based in history and all the rest. That's why you could say surrealism, but it's surrealism that dissolves into this cosmogenesis that's thrilling, but it's partly thrilling in the way that you're in the planetarium and you're looking at stars, you're overwhelmed by all of those stars. And that's part of the aesthetic. You got to be overwhelmed by the information and the mythopoetics of it. You can't possibly know all of the details.
And then when he talks about his work, or actually when he says anything at all, it becomes 1,000 times more dimensional in a fascinating way.
Yes, it's galactic for sure. Okay, so Jason, do you have something to add about this poem? And then we're going to move on to another Charles Bernstein poem. This one I am going to predetermine because I want to do this. Okay, Jason, your thoughts?
Yeah, this is an amazing poem, and I'm kind of, each little movement from word to word does so much work. But so just looking at the first line, like implied inner palpability, like palpability is the ability to touch something, like a doctor palpates something to see if there is a lump. But implied inner palpability would mean, like, as transpersonal dictation, is that between two people? Like, so in a way, it's about the magic of language or of communication, where we take something inside our brains, or if that's where it is, and send it out through jazz improvisation or poetry, and it is received by someone, as we think, and something forms in their mind in response, as if we're conveying, but we're not really conveying what is really in our heads. But even like internally, our transpersonal dictation is almost just the ability to think the self, or the act of writing, or the act of, talking to oneself, is itself, like, when you think about it, to use the word, an interiority word, think, like, is just mind-blowing, so to speak.
Yeah, it is indeed. Thank you, Jason. Thank you all. Okay, so now we're going to turn to a poem by Charles called Let's Just Say. I'm going to ask Charles to read it, and then everyone, just about everyone, is going to get a chance to say something very brief and just responsive to the poem. And then we're going to go in. By that point, we'll be ready for a round of final words. Everybody gets to talk about week 8. Let me just say that. Let's just say that when I first heard this poem, it's from The World on Fire, 2001, when Charles came to Penn in 2003, we had a reading in the garden of the Writers' House.
That's right.
I'm not sure why the garden. Maybe we were under construction. I don't know what was wrong, but we were in the garden, and it was a beautiful September afternoon, and it was a perfectly clear sky, and there must have been 100 people in the garden, and this was our hello to Charles Bernstein to join the community here at the Writers' House, and we were hatching the idea of Penn Sound at that point, and we were starting our partnership. And when you read this poem, which most of the people, so my wife Jane and I were there, and we had experienced 9/11's blue sky perfectness Tuesday, this 11th of September, and this was like maybe the 15th of September 2 years later, and no one in the space could hear Let's Just Say and not think about what we were, the kind of loss that we were thinking about and the change that overcame us. So whether or not we interpret it right as relevant to 9/11 New York or 9/11 life, there wasn't a dry eye in the house as we listened to this poem. Not to set,
Well,
not
there
to
is
set it up
a
too
specific reference to the Twin Towers. So
yeah, so it is a 9/11 poem, I suppose, but that doesn't do it justice. So let's just say, and following that, I'm going to ask Andrew to be first with Dave on deck, just to say anything very briefly in response to Charles's reading of this magnificent poem.
Well, thanks. Let's just say that every time you fall, you never hit the ground. Let's just say when the day ends, the night refuses to come. Let's just say that if all else fails you, at least you can count on that. Let's just say that a bird in the fist is better than a bird and a foot. Let's just say that the scarlet ambrosia of your innermost longing is the nectar of a God who never chooses to visit. Let's just say that if chance accords possibilities, melancholy postpones insomnia. Let's just say that sleep is the darker side of dreams. Let's just say that sometimes a rose is just a red flower. Let's just say that every step forward is also a step nowhere. Let's just say that the thirst for knowledge can only be quenched if one learns how to remain hungry. Let's just say that green is always a reflection of the idea of green. Let's just say that I encounter myself not in the mirror, but in the manure. Let's just say that each door leads to another door. Let's just say that we think it before we see it, or better, we see it as we think it. Let's just say that a stone's throw might be a world away. Let's just say that love is neither here nor there. Let's just say that the girl is the mother of the woman. Let's just say that without disorder, there can be no harmony. Let's just say that the aim is not to win, but not to lose too bad. Let's just say that a knife in the back is better than a knife in the heart. Let's just say that between sleep and dreams is the reality behind reality. Let's just say that I am very weak and want to take a bath. Let's just say that the truth is somewhere between us. Let's just say that the top of a tower is not a good place to hide. Let's just say that mankind suffers its language. Let's just say a bird cannot always be in flight. Let's just say that we are not far from where we would have been if we had lived better lives. Let's just say that pretty ugly is an aspiring oxymoron. Let's just say if the sun is a rock burning in space, then the earth is a shard hurtling from its designation. Let's just say that little is gained when nothing is lost. Let's just say that the lie of the mind is the light of perception.
Thank you, Charles. Andrew, quick response followed by Dave.
Thank you for the reading, Charles. It was beautiful. Through anaphora, the subjunctive or hypothetical enunciative mode that's cued by the repetition of let's just say, for me, creates this kind of like cognitive suspension, but also a sort of like through repetition, this environment of chanting that allows for the differences and within the repetitions to emerge and kind of blossom, but in a way that hurtles away from its designation as the shards do in this poem.
That's lovely. Thank you, Andrew. Dave's up and Elan is on deck because I saw your response to this poem, Elan. Dave?
I really
Papa?
love just the expression, let's just say, because I mean, it can mean a bunch of things, but the thing that comes to me most is that's what you say when you set up an assumption. It's like, lawyers saying assuming arguendo. Like, let's just say we accept this as true. And it's really interesting and fun to read a bunch of things to be accepted as true that can be counterintuitive or even almost absurd. It just really leverages the whole concept of what we accept as true.
Yeah. Fantastic. Thank you. Elan, followed by Gab.
So the line I think you might have seen me respond to is let's just say that sleep is the darker side of dreams. I don't know what it is about that sentence, but I just found it so beautiful. I think I was telling you, Al, after class one day that I find dreams really important, and that's why I personally love when it's time to sleep, because I just feel like when we dream, we're so free and we just learn so much, but we also learn to let go of so much when we sleep and when we dream. But I've never encountered, I guess, this idea that sleep is the darker side of dreams. It made me think of like the darker side of the moon, for example. And I don't know, that image just kind of stuck with me. I've never encountered anything like that before. So
Thank you, Elan. Gab, followed by Max.
I really like the line, let's just say that I am very weak and want to take a bath, because I feel like it's a very human thing to admit to. So in that way, the poem is kind of letting its guard down as the speaker is letting its guard down, and as someone who might say that in their own life is letting their guard down. So I feel like it's sort of breaking away at this like front that a poem or a person is expected to have. That lines up in a really cool way with all the other claims that the poem makes.
Thank you, Gab. I tend to overread all the lines of this poem in relation to 9/11, and if you read, or I don't know if it's probably available somewhere. Charles was putting out daily.
Well, it's in this.
It's in here. Okay, yeah, kind of a description of what was going on in New York at the time. And if you read that in relation to this, you'll realize that this was like a literal thing. Like, I feel weak and I just want to take a bath, because everybody was really dirty and dusty and so on. Max, followed by Lainey.
Andrew already put so brilliantly the effect of the repetition of let's just say. I think, but the effect of that repetition also it changes the sort of the tone as the poem progresses, right? The subjunctive moves into this tone at times of resignation, and then it moves into then this somewhat more optimistic tone, right? And this is all just on this one repeated phrase, this rather banal phrase, let's just say, this thing that we say all the time. We don't actually even really think about what it means or what it can mean.
Yeah. Thank you, Max. Lainey's up and Sophia's on deck.
I'm really struck by the line, let's just say that the truth is somewhere between us, because it's something that in a different context means that not, we don't know what the truth is, or it's not only one person's point of view, but in the context of 9/11, it has a lot more gravity in terms of, no single person can comprehend what's going on, and even all the people together trying to understand what's happening, we still are not able.
Sophia's up, and then I'm on deck because I feel like saying something.
Well, I'm thinking of the refrain of let's just say, and how it kind of like foregrounds a presumed agreement so as to move forward. Like what's between us is the thing we cannot agree on. So let's just say blah, blah, blah. And then the other person responds, let's just say blah, blah, blah. I feel like there is an invitation for my participation in what would I say if I was allowed to participate in the poem and add, well, let's just say I feel this way. And I think the line, let's just say that little is gained when nothing is lost, speaks to the mechanism of the poem, insofar as we have to have conversations and risk being misunderstood. Because if we don't take that risk to try to find the middle ground, which is the truth that is strung between the two of us, then we gain nothing. And we have to be willing to lose something in order for that progress.
Yeah. I'm going to comment, followed by Erica, please. I just love this poem, and I often think about Charles Bernstein as expressing the values of a radical secular Jewish New Yorker who speaks the King's English. King's English meaning King's County.
Brooklyn. The Brooklyn English is the King's English.
Radical secular Jewish mentality that gets hit by his own post-Harvard experience, realizing that philosophically the ground isn't the ground. And then being a New Yorker and connecting with your aesthetic pals around, but remaining that New Yorker with the comedy of the poetry combined with the, pardon the word, the post-modernity of the situation, knowing there is no ground, and then getting hit by the towers falling, which we thought were, if they go to the ground, then we at least know where the ground is. But let's just say that every time you fall, you never hit the ground. Or in the terms of in a restless world like this is, even the ground that you thought was a rock, Manhattan, can break. That there is no ground. But then there was this moment, being an American citizen, being, as you and I both are, the children of immigration, and particularly of modern secular Jewish immigration, emerging out of that and then realizing that New York is a place that is both stable but teaches you how to fail, just to try to minimize how bad the failure is. And I'm very moved by this idea that falling and failure can never reach a bottom, that you have to suppose, let's just say, where the bottom is. Who's next? I can't remember. Erica, followed by Kate.
How am I supposed to follow that?
I don't know. You're in this category too, aren't you? Radical,
I know. I was
secular,
once a
Jewish
Kings
New
County.
You don't speak the
Most of my life
Kings.
was as a Kings County resident.
Yeah, and you also speak the kind of Bergen County English, don't you, or whatever, wherever your parents. You're not admitting that.
I might not admit it, but yes, I do.
Brooklyn is a metaphor. It's not meant to be a specific dialect.
There are two things that I would say. The first is that one of the things that, we were talking a lot about the content and individual lines. And, for me, like, I am endlessly struck by the line, let's just say that mankind suffers its language. And, the thing that I'm also struck by is the way that Charles is a formal kind of genius because, to extend a Liszt poem in this way, I think is quite difficult. And looking at the craft of how each individual statement is made and the order in which they come, which I think is something we've been alluding to, I would just bring that forward a bit because it's quite astonishing because the emotional resonance that many of us are pointing to that's grounded in particular lines, that also has to do with the ordering of the lines and the way the tension is building up between the spaces between the lines.
They are new sentences. Absolutely. It's a perfect example of it. I want to turn next to Kate and Jason, but before I do, and then that will wrap up this and we'll get to final words. Everybody gets a final word, which they'll all have to be brief. But I wonder if you guys would dip into the comment stream to see what people are saying about this particular poem. Feel free to read a bunch of them. Lainey?
Sure. Ray says, let's just say wow. Miranda Jubb, I love that owl. That was so moving, Al, from Jane. Same thing from Mona, says that. Hannah Linden, I can't find the poem anywhere and can't buy the book in the UK either. How can we fix that?
Sorry, Hannah Linden, but we will figure out a way.
We'll figure it out.
Vijaya said this poem seems to be a reconciliatory poem after a deep conflict and a coming together of people wanting to rebuild something broken. Miranda Jubb also said the truth is somewhere between us. It exists in community, not in isolation. It is only in communication we can find truth.
That's what we were talking about this afternoon. How important is that? Okay, so we're going to go to Kate and Jason for brief comments about Charles's poem. Then we're going to go all the way around for final words. Please be brief.
I'm fascinated by the phrase "let's just say" and how it establishes something that's agreed upon as true, or asks us to suppose that something is true that may not in fact be true. And then in this poem, the phrase is followed by all these twisted truisms and aphorisms that kind of doubly show or evince language as the locus of the lie of the mind at the end of the poem. How untrustworthy language renders what occurs in our minds.
Yeah, what are we supposed to do when we realize that our own language is not trustworthy? Where do we go from there? Okay, Jason, briefly on this, and then we'll do final words.
Yeah, I mean, let's just say echoes in my mind to This Is Just to Say, or Williams's apology about the plums. And
yes, so right.
And in a way, that's a kind of that poem's a confession, but and the other thought is that the word just is such a funny word to mean both like righteous and correct and merely.
Yeah. That's great. I love the callback to Williams. Actually, I hadn't thought of that.
Sure.
Okay, final words. Everybody has a final word. It's got to be brief so we can go all the way around, okay? So, Natalia, your first very brief final thought about week 8, how you feeling, how much you love Charles. You can just say that if you want.
I love you, Charles. This was great. I just really appreciate...
And we haven't even met.
I've met you through your work. I really appreciate this week because I think in ModPo we've spent so much time deconstructing the hierarchy of like readership and writing, and I feel like this week just personally put an emphasis on that and really allows so much meaning to come.
Great. Thank you. Joe, you're up, and Aiden Hunt, if you want a final thought.
I love the line, let's just say that the girl is the mother of the woman, because it reminds me of each line birthing another line in this poem and how the poem extends itself through its own thought, which I think is beautiful.
Nice, Joe. Aidan Hunt, followed by Sophia DuRose.
I just want to say, in addition to this being my favorite week, I want to mention, I don't think anybody mentioned Tyrone Williams.
Yes,
And
another person who we very much mourn and miss from this year.
I got to meet him
Yeah.
last November when Evie was here, and that was nice. And I read these more carefully this year, and I enjoyed them. It's really worth reading. He really has a way with words.
Thank you for mentioning Tyrone, and we are going to have a Tyrone Day. Tyrone used to come every year to be part of the day where we honored a black poet, most recently Evie Day, Evie Shockley. You were there for that. And now we're going to be honoring Tyrone, and we've decided to stop doing those confabs in honor of Tyrone. We just can't do it anymore. And so this will be the last one of those. And that's coming up in November. I'll make sure everybody knows about it. Okay. Thank you, Aidan. Sophia, followed by Lainey.
I'll be very brief. I just am very appreciative to be sitting at the table here with Charles Bernstein, who I've long admired. Just a quick shout out to join my office hours at 8 a.m. on Wednesdays. We always have a lot of fun.
Thank you. Lainey, followed by Max.
I just wanted to offer appreciation, Charles, for your moving words on Lynn, who is very much on all of our minds, and to say that we are going to be having an event this spring, which she'll be a part of. We're working on, Julia Block and I, a Jacket 2 feature on her work. There's already one Jacket 2 feature on her work that was made after her passing. So just, love to all the people who love Lynn. And also to shout out a couple of her more recent books that are just brilliant, allegorical moments. It's unbelievable.
That's her essay book, Wesleyan University Press.
It's just, it's remarkable.
Writing as an aid to memory.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that not a recent book.
The other recent one, Fall Creek.
That's her last published book. But there is another book in the works.
Can't wait. Yeah. So, thank you.
Thank you, Lainey. Max is up and Ilana's on deck.
Just a really quick word of appreciation to everybody who came to my office hours yesterday. As Gudia, who called in from Hamburg earlier, alluded to. We spent a whole hour yesterday talking about Charles's "There's a Hole in My Pocket," and it was a fabulous discussion, and it ranged from one subject to the next. It was a really fruitful poem to talk about and work with.
And I just want to plug the European Time Zone Meetup group, ETZM, and say that when Max does it, they record a video, then we put it up, and it becomes part of the CCCR syllabus, which is Collaborative Close Community Close Readings. So these are videos that sometimes are led by bona fide TAs like Max, but others that just come to us. So if you ever want to make a video of you and your pals, we in our class are going to be, every student is going to be responsible for creating one of these videos. It is a method that you can use to bring people together. We know it is, and so we recommend it, and thank you to Max. Elan is up and Sanvi is on deck. Final thought?
I just wanted to share that the poem Inner Palpability, I really loved it. All four of us were freaking out over it. It was insane. And just because of how it made me feel like, it makes me think of how small we are in comparison to everything else, but also how wonderful it is that we're part of everything somehow. And it also reminded me of my favorite book, Dune by Frank Herbert, somehow. So yeah.
I think he would love that. Right? Thank you. Sanvi's up and Noah is on deck.
I just want to say how much I appreciate the poem, let's just say, because as someone who grew up kind of post 2001 and 9/11 and very obviously was the same demographic as the people who committed the crimes, it's really beautiful to see a poem that focuses more on resolution rather than blaming and creating further conflict. So it was really beautiful to read this.
Thank you, Sanvi. We're going to Noah, followed by Drew.
Hi. I just want to say thank you, Charles, for coming and hanging out. This is the first time I've been to one of these, so this is really nice. And yeah, I think the language poetry is my favorite week so far of the MAPA syllabus. So.
Cool, thank you. Drew, followed by Gab.
Yeah, I had a really nice time listening to the reading. It was like very enjoyable. And then I also like how language is very independent this week. It seems to be really doing its own thing. And I like that. Yeah.
Love that, thank you. Gab, followed by Jason.
Thank you, Charles, for coming. This was really cool to be a part of and to get to hear you reading as a part of it. And now I feel like I'm just going to be thinking about the idea that language is untrustworthy for the next few weeks, months, years.
Oh no, that's going to mess you up.
It kind of, in a good way,
I'm sorry, I think I hear what you're saying, but language is not trustworthy, so let's start from scratch. Thank you, Gab. Jason, followed by Erica.
Yeah, I just want to kind of shout out a recent work that may or may not be by Charles Bernstein, called "Poetry Has No Future Unless It Comes to an End." Poems of Artificial Intelligence, and the blurb below it says the poems in this collection were generated between April 2020 and May 2022 by a neural network trained on Charles Bernstein's own writing. The readings, which you can find on Pen Sound, were performed by a synthetic voice trained on Charles Bernstein's voice.
Oh, can't wait for that. Can you send us a link to that?
Yep.
Cool, and that sets us up for week 9 very well. Okay, Erica, followed by Kate.
Yeah, so I'm having some serious FOMO this week. Today, I really thank you, Charles. I'm definitely in the Charles Bernstein fan club and feel endlessly grateful for everything that your work offers and teaches us. And I also would ballyhoo the Tina Dara poem in ModPo Plus, which might be a good way for folks to begin to think towards week 9. There's a poem talk that has some people on it, including Joan Ritalik. So folks might be interested in that. And again, thank you all. I wish I could be in Philadelphia today.
We wish you could be in Philadelphia permanently, so maybe we can make that happen somehow. Kate is up, and Andrew is on deck.
I want to highly recommend Lainey Brown's recent book, Intaglio Daughters, from Ornithopter Press, which is a gorgeous poetic homage to Lynn Hijinian, her work and her influence on Lainey's own. And I also wanted to mention that Lainey is curating a response to Hijinian and her work in memoriam for Jacket 2 that I believe is coming out before long, so everyone should keep an eye out for it.
Fantastic, thank you. Andrew's up, Dave's on deck.
In the excerpt from My Emily Dickinson that we read this week, Susan Howe asks, whose order is shut inside the structure of a sentence? And in the Leslie Scalapino poem I mentioned earlier, she writes, they've destroyed language, so we have to destroy it in it.
Yes. And what's the mantra in our course, Joe? You have to shout it out loud if you don't mind using the F-bomb.
Fuck the language.
Okay, there you go. Thank you. Don't tell your parents that I've taught you this. Actually, we met your mom. She'd be cool with it, I think. Dave's up. Charles is on deck.
Just the thing I love the most about language poetry and all the poems for this week is just how overtly they embody the idea of epistemic humility, not just the rejection of the idea that the poet is the guardian of truth, but that none of us can really find the truth, that the most we can do is get something it's the best guess at the time, which makes conversely us look at closed text as being epistemically arrogant. I just think that's a cool concept.
Yes, thank you, Dave. Charles, final thoughts?
Well, thank you would be the main thing I would say. It's been great to be here, and not only doing this, but also the three ModPo Plus that we did earlier today. It's great to be back at Penn, and it's wonderful to be part of this week. I would note, because this week, you're all like this week, which is great, that Al, of course, is a this week person. If you had to put Al into one of the weeks, just generationally and so on. So it's.
You mean wait? You're voting me into week 8 to the crew?
Absolutely. I think you're a part of week 8 as much as anybody is, and that's an important part of our aesthetic. No, but Al is, of course, obviously we work together. He's one of the people I work most closely with, but it's. It's great to get that response to what we've done, and which isn't always so appreciated.
What's not always so appreciated? No, where do we begin?
Week 8.
Week 8, yes.
And so I just in terms of that ModPo, truth is somewhere between us. I mean, I think that's the aesthetic of ModPo when you're reading. That the reading of the poem, the meaning of the poem is between us. It's not in the poem, it's not in the expert, it's not in any one of you, it's between us. It's in the discussion, it's in the conversation, it's in the exchange, it's in the speech acts.
Yes. Mass amateurization turns out to be a new kind of professionalization.
You should write a book about that.
I think I'm going to. Oh, I already did. Mass amateurization is the most radical thing you could imagine. I want to say something about Brian, who called earlier, and then I want to say something about Charles for my final word. But before we get to that, Chris Martin, Magda Andrews-Hoke, and Zach, who seems to have fallen asleep or disappeared.
No,
is he still there?
He's there.
He's hidden behind Joe, right? Right. Zach and I used to be in different places. I was a victorious team headed to greater things, and Zach was vanquished. And now we're both vanquished. So Zach and I are back in the same spot. So I appreciate that. But anyway, love you guys for doing the technology. And to Brian and Yulia, thanks for calling. And just a shout out to Brian. I just want to make sure everybody understands that when the studies of MOOCs have been done, they have determined that a lot of people drop out and fail. Aidan Hunt and I have had a correspondence to this, and I quote you in my book, by the way, about the ridiculousness of the idea that anybody could fail a non-credit, free, open access MOOC. What the fuck? What kind of comment? What kind of fail, right? Dropout. And Brian, who's been with us since, it sounds like about 2015, calls for the first time, right? So we're not even aware of this person in Colorado who's, we're somewhat aware because he posts, but the shout out to every Brian that's out there who's been with us for years, right? And are now are once in a while just raising their hands, in this case, getting a copy of your book. And Charles, finally, I love you more than I can say. What you've done for poetry is extraordinary. What you've done for the teaching of poetry, what you've done for the idea that close listening is as important as close reading. And the difference between close listening and close reading is that close reading is something you can still do in a solitary way, even though it's supposed to be done as a group. But close listening is the very act of hearing someone else, of intersubjectivity as an actual thing, listening with your ear to what others are saying. That is the most humane thing that poetry can do. And you've taught us all about close listening. You're not the only one, but your book, your collection of essays of 1999, Close Listening, your creation of the idea of pen sound.
Co-creation.
Co-creation. Well, that's all it is. Always, we did it together.
We did come up with that together.
Yes, we can, and we've made some crazy decisions about it because Pen Sound is still a Web 1.0. It's not even Web 2.0. It's a Web 1.0 proudly completely proudly dysfunctional, even though Chris Martin and Zach
I was going to
Gardner
say
would
the
like
guys
to.
in the back there have some.
They're like,
have some
"Can
good
we
ideas.
make it a
good
little
ideas.
better?"
Good ideas.
But Charles, your influence on all of us, your generosity is something that should never go unsaid, and hasn't gone unsaid, as a lot of people, including young readers, are realizing who you are and how much you mean to all of us. So thank you to Charles. Let's put our snaps together for Charles Bernstein. Snaps. That. Thank you all for coming. We were only a few minutes late. We did a fabulous 90-minute. Week 9, aleatory, chance-based, quasi-non-intentional. Who, what? But we've already gone a little ways into that, haven't we? So week 9 is coming up. We hope you'll be joining us for the webcast week 9. And please spend some more time reading and responding to people's essays on Barbara Guest. That's happening this week. And we've done a really good job so far. So thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next week. Bye-bye.